Super, brilliant. Okay, welcome everybody to this week's Data Protection Forum. We've got some people live in the room, and I know that none of you will be watching the recording. This is actually our 18th Data Protection Forum, which is actually quite amazing. So we are rapidly building up a real library now of useful information, and all of the previous recordings are still available. So if you haven't attended all of the sessions, and you spot a session you think you'd like to attend, then just let us know and we can get you the recording. That's no problem at all. So today we're going to talk about mastering data retention, a practical guide to GDPR confidence. For those who don't know me, I think most people do, but I'm Keith from Insurity. We're the people who make GDPR fun, because it's fun, it gets done. If it's a bore, it's a chore. And we really look to simplify data protection compliance. And today we're going to be talking about a key but often overlooked area, and that's the area of data retention. The aim of this session is to help you gain practical clarity on what to keep, what to delete, and how to handle data requests with confidence. Let's make compliance feel less like a chore. Maybe even by the end, you might even think it's a little fun. So what we're going to cover today, we are going to cover why retention matters, how to set a clear retention policy, when to archive versus when to delete, the hidden risks of poor deletion, mapping your data lifecycle, handling deletion requests under GDPR, empowering your team, a little bit about tools and templates, and then we should have time for some Q&A at the end. So why does retention matter? Or why does retention policy matter? Think of data rather like thinking of milk, because as milk ages, some becomes delicious cheese, but not all of it ages well. And the same is true of data. Some data ages well, some data really doesn't age well at all. And keeping personal data too long creates risks, legal risks, reputational risks, and even financial risks. Why do I say that? Because if you have, once you've got your data retention policy that says how long you keep data, what you don't want, although admittedly it's unlikely to happen, but you could, is you have an audit, and the audit then finds that your data retention policy says, well, you keep personnel records for 7 years after someone's left, and then someone goes to the filing cabinet and finds a file that's 15 years old, and then you've got to explain that one as to why that's still there. But the other thing with personal data is, obviously, if someone puts in a data subject access request, then the more data you've got, the more you've got to look through to try and satisfy that request. So if you minimize the amount of data that you keep, not only is that a GDPR requirement anyway, but it actually has a real practical requirement, a real practical benefit, because you reduce the amount of time that and effort you've got to spend actually finding data. But also, having a clear retention policy is not just about ticking boxes, it's about building trust. And today we're going to focus on how to strike that balance between business needs and regulatory compliance. So, setting clear retention policies, what does that actually mean? It's actually a strong requirement under GDPR to have a data retention policy. And your data retention policy should include for each sort of data, what the data type is. So is it employee data? Is it client data? Is it prospect data? Is it supplier data? Is it subcontractor data? Whatever the data is, that data type, how long you're keeping it for, why you're keeping it for that length of time, and then how you're making sure you've destroyed it at the end of that. And this bit about how long you're going to keep data, there is no set answer to how long each type of data should be kept. There's no golden rule book you can grab that says you should keep this data for this amount of time, you should keep this data for this amount of time, you should keep this data for this amount of time. At the end of the day, you can decide to keep data for however long you want that fits your business, providing you can come up with those answers to put in your retention policy, and the main one being why. As an example, one of my clients is a championship football club. They keep their player data for 100 years. Why? Because it might be that they have somebody researching the history of the club or history of a particular competition, who wants to know who played in what competition, what the score was, who scored the goal, when they scored it, all that sort of thing. Plus, they also have contractual data that they keep on the players, and so they sat and had a meeting, and the minuted decision of that meeting was to keep the data for 100 years, and that's fine because they can provide a justifiable reason for keeping that long. If you're just Joe Blogg's newsagent and you say you want to keep your newspaper around data for 100 years, I think you'd probably find that a bit more tricky to justify. And why the data is necessary, because GDPR is clear that data can only be kept for as long as is necessary. You do also need to think about legal requirements. So like accounting data, typically you have to keep for 6 or 7 years, industry standards and business use. So start by categorizing your data types, then assign a retention period that reflects the purpose and the risk. And the main thing, as I put on the slide there, is make sure that you document your decisions, because as a judge said in a recent court case, if it wasn't written down, it didn't happen. And so do make sure that it's actually documented. Now, these days, because that's probably more likely to be an electronic document than a written document per se, but nonetheless, it should be in the document. So, what about archiving versus deletion then? Excuse me. Let's clarify a common confusion. Archiving is not deleting. Archiving is not deleting, because archiving is putting your data into secure, low access storage. It might be on site, might be off site, but you're still storing that information for long-term business or legal reasons. And I've said that just now, there's no reason why maybe you shouldn't do that, but just be aware that when you've archived something, it's not the same as deleting it. So if you get a data subject access request, you can't say, we're not providing you with that data because we've got that data, but it's archived and it's held in a secure store in Wales. I don't know why I picked Wales, but it's a secure store in Wales, and it's going to take us 2 days to get that back, and there's a cost to getting that back, so we ain't going to do it. You can't do that because the data's still there. You know it's there, so you've got to get it back if you need that to satisfy a request, or if you need to satisfy an inquiry after a breach, for example. So you do need to think about that, because some companies just automatically archive everything. I've still got a memory of going to the head office of one of the UK supermarket chains, being taken down this long corridor into this room where they just had file upon file upon file, and DVDs and computer backup tapes and everything else that had all been archived, and the room was probably the size of a football pitch, and it was just full. Now, actually retrieving anything from there must have been something of a nightmare, but also you do have to ask, really, do they really need to keep all of that information? And if they do, is that the most effective way of keeping it? But of course, some things do need to be archived and kept for a while. And whether you say you might archive just in your own office, you might not go out to an external office. But deletion is permanent, because once you've deleted something, and under GDPR, it has to be deleted in a secure way so that you're sure it's been deleted. But once you've done that, it's permanent. You can't get it back. So again, if you're deleting in line with your data retention policy, that's absolutely fine. If you're deleting outside of that, then why? And are you documenting that? And are you documenting why you've deleted that particular piece of information, maybe before your data retention policy says you normally would? Now, sometimes, of course, that's going to be accidental. And if it's accidental deletion, then accidental deletion is a data breach. Because if you should have data and you can't retrieve it, so if your data retention policy says that you keep payroll data for 7 years, let's say, and you're but you've accidentally deleted the payroll data from 4 years ago, actually that's a data breach, and so you need to actually record that as a data breach, and you may or may not need to have to tell everyone that you've accidentally deleted their data. That's a decision based on the actual data itself, and there's not time in this session to go into when and why you would or wouldn't have to notify people. But the question is always to ask yourself, would this potentially present a problem? And moving on from that, would I be prepared to defend the fact that I've deleted this data in court? And if the answer to either of those is yes or no to would you be prepared to defend it, then probably you've made a mistake and you need to treat it as a data breach. Okay, so the hidden risk of poor deletion. Here's where I find that many organizations slip up, because just erasing it is not necessarily deleting it. That might seem like a conundrum, but because if I'm my PC, for example, I delete a file, it doesn't actually delete the file, it just deletes the bit in the what's called the file allocation table of the computer, which knows where that file is. But the file's still there. It will get overwritten now that it's not active per se, but that might take weeks or months, and in that time that data is still there. The bigger problem, though, that I've seen than that is that people have a secure way of deleting data off of their computer. Fine. But as I've put in the second bullet point here, either there's another copy of that on a shared drive, and that creates a whole minefield of risk, or that data's on a backup and there's another problem somewhere in the organization and that backup gets restored. And suddenly, in restoring that backup, suddenly that data that for Joe blogs that you thought you'd safely, strongly deleted is back. That gives you a problem, because if you then had a breach for some reason and that data got stolen, you'd have to notify that person that in fact you hadn't deleted the data when you said you had, even though you had, but in fact you'd actually then restored it back again, if that made sense. So you do need to think about that if you restore from backup, you do need to think about actually checking, is there anything in that backup that actually, in terms of personally identifiable information, we said we deleted, because then you need to delete it again. The other thing I would say about deletion is when you dispose of hardware. So when you dispose of your computer, now it used to be in the old days, and I'm perhaps showing my age here, but it used to be that hard drives were expensive. And so it was very much the case that you would use a piece of software, probably, hopefully anyway, to securely destroy everything that was on the hard drive before you put the computer up for sale or transferred it somewhere else or whatever. However, these days, hard drives are relatively cheap. I mean, you can buy a 1 terabyte drive for less than 100 quid. So they're relatively cheap. So actually, I would say rather than going out and buying expensive software to securely delete your data, take the hard disk out of your computer and whack it with a hammer. And if that doesn't break it, get a bigger hammer. But it really is, because if you whether it's a conventional hard drive or it's a solid state hard drive, if you whack it hard enough with a hammer, you make sure that no one's ever going to get anything off of that hard drive, whatever they try and do. And it's quite a good stress reliever, by the way. But that's an aside. So make sure you've mapped your data lifecycle, because you can't have a data retention policy if you don't know what data you've actually got. And there's a whole other episode of this data security forum about data lifecycle, so I'm not going to dwell on it. But it's important to say that it's recognizing that data has a life. You collect the data, you use the data, you store the data, and then you either archive or delete the data. And understanding that journey is key to staying compliant, because a good data map shows you not just where data lives, but how it flows between your different systems and your teams. This clarity helps identify where policies need tightening and where there's a hidden risk, maybe. And if you need any help with data mapping, of course, we're always more than happy to help you with that. So what about deletion requests then? Deletion requests under GDPR. Article 17 gives the right to erasure. And I would think that this is probably the only article actually in GDPR which I think is badly worded, because it's not actually a right to erasure, it's a right to request erasure. It's the same as the right to be some people call it the right to be forgotten. Again, it's the right to request to be forgotten. There's all sorts of reasons why you can say, no, we can't comply with that request. It might be that it's a legal obligation to hold that data. HMRC, the tax man, is not going to take kindly to the fact that if they come to inspect your records, they're saying, well, Fred said he wanted this data deleted, so we deleted it. So we can't know how much we paid him, or how much tax he paid, or what national insurance he paid. I think you're going to just open a real can of worms if you do that. So do think about it. And this is one area where a number of things in GDPR, like data breaches, like data subject access requests, and these have time limits on them. And Article 17, the right to erasure, says that you've got 30 days to delete that data from when someone asks you to delete it. Now, in those 30 days, you should obviously verify the identity of the person making the request, assess whether the request is valid, and then delete where appropriate, and confirm back to the requester either that you have deleted it or the reason that you couldn't. But take your time, because you've got 30 days. So if you get someone on your desk today, so a request from a data subject saying, I want to exercise my rights under Article 17 to have my data deleted, then don't rush to do that, because decisions made in haste are rarely good decisions. So take your time over it. Once you've verified that person, you've assessed it, and you are going to delete it, make sure you log that you've deleted that person's data, because otherwise, if you come to have a data subject access request a year down the line, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, you might think, what happens to that data then? So just log the fact you've deleted it. Incidentally, as well, I had recently a case with a client which was quite interesting on this, because they had an offer open only to first-time customers. So if it was first time you'd used this business, you could get a discount on your order, a fairly common thing. What they discovered some people were doing was making that first order, then effectively exercising their rights under Article 17, getting their data deleted, and then coming back and saying, we're a new customer again, even though really they weren't, and trying to fraudulently get the discount twice. Now, again, if you suspect that sort of thing is happening, it's another reason why you can say, sorry, I'm not going to delete your data. Ultimately, you're the controller of the data. It's your decision whether to delete the data or not. And again, if you have a situation like that one I just described where you're not sure what to do, of course, please do come and talk to us. So the whole thing with this, and it's true across a lot of GDPR, across a lot of data protection, is empowering your team. So compliance isn't the job of one person or one team, or it shouldn't be. It's everyone's responsibility. That's why we encourage organizations to train data champions across their different departments, and encourage your data champions, give them practical training, not just a folder of policies. Because compliance is a team sport. And not only is that spreading the load, if you like, hopefully it also makes it more enjoyable because nobody gets the whole chore to do. It's shared out. You know, if football is your thing, let's say, yes, of course you can play football by yourself. You can go outside in your garden or your yard and you can kick a ball against the wall. But it's much more fun when you play as part of a team. And when your team really gets it, then compliance becomes part of your company mindset. So it's not, and I always say that GDPR is a mindset, not a rule set. Get the mindset right, the rules come easy. And part of that is encouraging data champions. So in terms of tools and templates, we have a number of templates available. We have templates available for a data retention schedule. We have a templated data retention policy. We have a templated data erasure policy. And we can help you with all of those and with data mapping, because at Ansurety, we love making life easier for you. Our clients use templates like retention schedules and GDPR request trackers to take the guesswork out of their compliance. So if you'd like access to those, just let us know. We are very soon, in the next couple of weeks, actually, you have access to our templates all online. And so even so, if you're unsure where to start, a quick data audit can go a long way. And of course, we're more than happy to do that for you. So that actually finishes the teach for this week's session. So thank you for spending time with us today. I hope the session gave you some ideas and some clarity to improve your data retention practices. So in a moment, I'm going to stop sharing the screen once I've moved on a little bit further, and you can see my email address and my LinkedIn contact details. If you'd like any tailored support, please do have a chat with us. Our first consultation conversation is always free. More than happy to spend 30 minutes with you just going through any issues that you have. And if you'd like that, please get in touch with either myself or Dorcas, and we can arrange that for you. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing the screen, bring us back into the room, and if anybody's got any questions or any points, be more than happy to take them.
Thanks, Keith.
Heather, how did you find that? Was it good?
Yeah, good. I think it's just, we're actually at the moment just going through a process of, because of various client data who have different retention policies, actually just trying to pull together and centralise so that we've got one document for us as to what we're doing for each, rather than doing it individually. Just
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Easier said than done though, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense to do that. Sadia, do you have any questions at all?
Hi, Keith. No, not at the moment. I'm just sort of taking in the information. Will he be, excuse me, will he be sharing the recording?
We will, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the recording will be going out. I think it's going out tomorrow, I believe. I think that's what normally happens. So yeah. Dorcas takes care of all that for me, but yeah, I think the recording will be going out tomorrow. But yeah, hopefully that was useful.
Yes, thank you.
And I don't know about where you are, but here in the south of England today, at least it's a little bit cooler than it was yesterday. So it's
Yeah,
not quite
definitely.
But yeah, well, thanks for coming along to the session. As I say, we're here every other Wednesday at 9 p.m. 9 p.m. Get that right, 9 a.m. And yeah, and in the weeks in between, we have our newsletter, which hopefully is subscribed to the GDPR Chronicle, which goes out in the Wednesdays when we don't have a live session. And just to say to watch out for your inbox, because we just yesterday actually published a document about the changes in the Data Use and Access Act, the new act that's just received royal assent in the UK, and what that means for UK GDPR. So if you'd like a copy of that, as I say, we'll be putting instructions in an email out to you to how to gain access to that. And that's completely free, by the way, there's no charge for that. But hopefully I've spent a couple of days going through it, actually working out what's different, because one of the things the government has done in its ultimate wisdom is everyone thought that the Data Use and Access Act was going to replace the Data Protection Act 2018, but in fact it isn't. The two are designed to run alongside each other. Now tell me how that makes it simpler, and you're a wiser man than me, but anyway, as I say, I've gone through and highlighted where things need to change. So yeah, great. With that, I think we will bring today's session to an end. So thanks, Heather.
Yeah, thanks, Keith.
Thanks, Adia. Great.
Thank you.